Thanks everyone for joining. The lovely Arnaud is going to share with us his climate game toolkit, which I think is going to blow our minds. I'm very excited. And I know he's going to talk about himself a little bit too, so I will not do that. But Arnaud, do you want to just take it away? I know we've got quite a bit to go through,
Yeah,
so I'll be quiet now.
okay, let's go. So, thank you everyone for taking part in the Green Game Jam, and thank you for coming to this workshop. I hope it will be useful for you. So, a quick word for the guy who's talking to you at the moment. My name is Arnaud Fayol. I'm art director at Ubisoft currently. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, started as a 3D environment artist, and contributed to a bit more than 50 games so far. So I always enjoyed having a holistic approach to game art and to ecology. I like to consider games as complex system where a lot of different components are intertwined and they need to be all tackled together at the same time, which is very similar to what happened with climate today. So following this interest in ecology, I ended up joining the IGDA Climate Special Interest Group, to which I'm leading the design workshop stream. So when I joined this group, I realized a few things. So game developers really want to help with climate. We're really a passionate bunch, and it's awesome to see all this energy and all this interest in helping with climate. But we always hit the same few roadblocks. People wonder if we can really make a difference. Is it worth making games to solve climate, or should we just like stop it altogether, become a climate activist, block airports, taking the seas with a sea shepherd or something like that? And what can we do exactly as game maker? What are our tools to really help climate? So we figured that what we need here is some clear visibility on what are the tools at our disposal, and we need to figure out a common language to talk about the solutions we have. So first, what game can do for climate? What are our areas of impact? So the most obvious one is the carbon influence. The making games and playing games use a lot of powers, which means a lot of greenhouse emission, and and we need to minimize this environment impact. The second thing we have is as entertainment is a strong cultural influence. We should aim at maximizing the cultural impact of games, raising awareness on climate, teaching people about the solutions they can do. And what the interesting thing is, as we influence the culture, it also has an indirect influence on carbons as we motivate players to reduce their own emission. So we have this kind of combo attack in reducing carbon with video games. So who can make a difference in the industry? What are our key players here? First, we have the game studios. It's one of the most obvious place to start with a workplace, all the infrastructures, our servers, our computers, our choice of partners, which can all mostly have an influence on our minimizing our environment impact. On the cultural side, the one that are the most open to our audience are the game marketing, the community management, the communication, the events we can organize around game, the call to action we can have for charities, these kind of things. And bang in the middle, we have the actual game content, everything we are putting in the game and that will affect players. So let me first ask, first question, which areas you guys working for? Can you answer in the chat just to have an idea of the who who's our audience today? Business side, cool. Live ops, tool programmer, game marketing, game content, some artists, great. Sweet. So yeah, it's mostly game content today, and it's brilliant because it's exactly what we will talk about today. So, how game can positively impact climate? What is our toolkit? So to define our toolkit, I like to start with what is game content. Uh, and for me, I always consider game based on four distinct pillars: the aesthetics, what are the visual of the game, how does it sound, um, what is the story, uh, what is the setting, the narrative setting of the game, what are the character talking about, what is the backstory, all these kind of things. The gameplay, what are the actual mechanics, what the player is doing, how does he interact with the game, why is it fun, and the technology, what's all the code behind the game, what engine and tools we use, which trigger my next question for you. Which pillar do you think is the most likely to have a positive impact on climate? Do you think we should focus on the aesthetic, the story, gameplay, or technology? Can you answer in the chat? Story, all story, gameplay, story or aesthetic. And I'd say that my answer would be all of them. Everyone has really something they can do with that. And this is what we will try to define here today together. So let's start with the story. On the story, we have the first powerful tool, which is the message of the game. So whether we want it or not, every creative product will convey one or multiple message. And if we can weave relevant themes in the narrative, we can turn every game into a force of good. The more engaging the game is, the more attention the player will pay to the message. Because often when we talk about ecology or hard topic, people may just listen casually and the message won't really stick. But in games, players are engaged with the content and they can receive the message in full force. So how can you use it well? So we can raise awareness about unfamiliar topic. We can educate in fun ways and most of all non-judgmental. We should not tell this is good, this is bad. Just educate about how things are and tell stories from climate frontline. So those three actions, the game Never Alone does it well. Which is my first example on these slides, as they are raising awareness on climate change and the life of indigenous minorities. But we can also aim at restoring trust in people and foster a culture of collaboration. Like maybe not all game must be about competition or shooting each other. Fostering collaboration is something that will be critical for climate. We can describe climate change as a legitimate threat to humanity. Maybe we don't need to invent a new mustache twirling villain in every game. We don't need to invent new apocalypse or anything. Climate change is already a relevant threat to weave a narrative around it. And we can instill indirect messages in game label as pure escapism. So this is something I really like and something the Outer Worlds do it well. Where in the Outer Worlds, players explore a world where capitalism has brought a space colony to the verge of collapse and expose corrupt leader who was just trying to escape rather than solving the problem for everyone. So it's a sci-fi novel. It's not relevant. It's not linked to what happened on Earth or climate or anything. It's just pure escapism. But as you follow the story, the message resonates well with what happened on Earth as well. And so even if the game doesn't directly say this is a climate game, you should be careful about that. The message can still be understood by players. So here's a new question for you. What game's message stuck you after playing? Can you think of a game that helped you grow as a person or affected your opinion about something? You can answer in the chat. Disco Elysium, yeah, it was also also something that affected me a lot. My Child Lemons Born, yeah, this was is great as well for creating hard empathy on a situation that you could be completely unaware of. Okay, I will move to the next one. So this was our first tool. Our second tool for the aesthetics is emotional impact. So Tony Kate Bambara said once the role of the artist is to make revolution irresistible, and that's exactly what game artists can do. Emotion can make abstract or remote event relatable on a personal level, and it's proven now that emotion drives decision making much more than cognition. Most of the time, you can read about all the scientific facts about climate change and everything, and your frontal brain will say yes, it's definitely something we should do. We should do something about that. But what will really trigger the moment will say, I'm doing something about this. It's when your emotions are affected, and emotion are activated by the aesthetic. So something we can do. So leverage aesthetic code to increase the message impact. Associate desirable outcome with feel-good aesthetics. So I put the example of Animal Crossing here because I'm persuaded that one of the reasons Animal Crossing got so many players, it's really because they are leveraging a feel-good aesthetic that makes you want to stay with the game. Everything looks soft and nice, and you want to be there. So you can, if you have a game with a hard message that you want player to interact with, you can make this message easier to digest with feel-good aesthetic. On the other side of the equation, you can also associate destructive strand with unsettling aesthetics, such as Final Fantasy VII, which has often been described by people around me by a game that made them realize that industry are going too far, that pollution is bad, and we should do something about that. But we can also engage player around how to pick by making them visually appealing. That's what I say a bit too early, and make player want to care about something, and maybe make them reflect on the meaning of life. So here's a new question for you. What game aesthetic emotionally moved you to the point of influencing your opinion about something? Can you think of any? Journey? Yeah, Journey is a great example. It's aesthetic is so powerful in this game. Agree? Yeah, same. I also was very moved by Green. Quake 2, okay, this was unexpected. Maybe I will ask you to develop a little bit after. Okay, let's just keep moving. We have a lot of more tools to talk about. So when the message really belong to the story, the emotional impact really belong to the aesthetic. But when some discipline collaborate together, we can get something even more powerful, which is the visualization. One of the roadblocks we have with climate change is that it's very hard for people to imagine things they've never seen because our brain don't relate to long-term or geographically distant problem. And not everyone is able to build a vision on their own. So what we can do is to build this vision for them and just show them so they can embrace them and make them their own. So we can, for example, show what a regenerative future looks like, which is what Overwatch is doing with a solar punk aesthetic. We can illustrate what's at stake if we don't act. A lot of games do that. Uh, Mutant Zero Eden, Fallout, all those post-apocalyptic games usually show, okay, this is if we don't act, this is what the world will look like. So you you can know that you don't want that. We can inspire and normalize sustainable way of living, such as urban gardening, or represent happiness that's not relying on consumerism. So those are some action that have been taken for in Tom Clancy's The Division 2 in the settlement, where um, where we wanted to contrast the how harsh was life after society collapsed, but on the other end, contrast this with how happy can people live even without all this, let's say, consumerism quality of life. And we can also, something quite important, inspire reconnecting with nature by showing its beauty. A lot of games do that brilliantly, like Firewatch, for example, which was a funny story recently about some kids who decided by while playing Firewatch that they wanted to become a fireman, a fire watcher, do that for a living, and just care about the countryside. So, same question. Can you think of a game world or characters that affected your vision of life or your vision of the future in a way you haven't imagined before? Okay, I leave a minute, and if you are not inspired, I will just move forward. Uh, can you say that again? Okay, sorry. Can you think of a game world or a game character who affected your vision of life or your vision of the future in ways that you haven't imagined before? Like a game that gave you that materialized a new vision, that created a new imaginary. Fallout, yeah. Detroit Become Human. Mm. Yeah, a lot of futuristic game do that really well. The Last of Us, Deus Ex, BioShock. Okay, thanks. Uh, I'm also using this workshop to gather some further example to feed further um, reflection and thinking around all these topics. So thank you for all your example. You're contributing to the cause. Um, okay, so it's in the visualization. Now let's move toward gameplay. Um, and first, something that can be initiated by the story and leveraged by gameplay is the call to action. So many people are already aware of climate change and they want to take action, but they just don't know how they can do it. And a good game can prime players to take action in real life. Priming is like exposing players to information and call of action repeatedly. So it prime people's brain, making them more likely to answer the call the next time they will receive it. And for players who have already been primed by by a cause, they can be activated by the right nudge at the right moment. If you play a very emotionally engaging game about a specific message and finish it with a call to action, people are much more likely to just take this call to action because they've already been primed by the game. So how to use that? So we can motivate players to take action in the real world, just like what Hungry Shark World was doing with the Finban Now hashtag. And they've done a lot of other call to action campaign. We can point to solution available at individual level. A lot of climate game want to talk about the big picture and how humanity should solve climate change by changing the industry or anything, but this is not available to anyone. But there are some solutions available to everyone, and they should start right now, and this should be showcased in our games. We can connect with other players to amplify impact. That's one of the things the literacy game or app is doing by empowering people to clean the planet by sharing pictures and geotags of all the litters they find, and then using that to as a lever to enforce stronger legislation or make polluter pay. We can encourage support or contribution to climate organization, and generally reward positive behavior in real life. So a new question for you. Is there a game that has explicitly or implicitly inspired you to take action in real life? Alba, yeah, great example. I have it in my next slide, I think. Theme Park. Oh, I haven't played this one. I will check it out. Mario Sunshine in a way. Yeah, it's also a game that came back in our discussion around climate change in a surprising way. But you're totally right. There's a strong message about pollution and cleaning pollution in Mario Sunshine. SimCity, yeah. Hmm. Okay, I'll keep moving to the next one. Thanks for those examples. Something else gameplay can do, even without a message, is what Paula Esquadra was brilliantly calling behavioral transference. So when you play games, you basically solve problems. And for our brain, solving problem in game or in real life are pretty much undistinguishable. So when you repeat action in games, it can become habit, and habits that been acquired in a game can be transferred to real life. It can become a part of your personality. So how we can do that? So we can push player out of their comfort zone. This is what most games are doing brilliantly, and it's one of the positive impact of game that's often quoted by psychologists. We can use it to build emotional resilience, such as in Spiritfarer, my first example here on this slide, which is a game about grieving, where the game repeatedly introduce you to wonderful character with which you will build a strong emotional connection, and at some point you have to let them go. And you have to try to let them go with a smile. And you do that repeatedly through the game, and it really helps building this emotional resilience around grief that can definitely be transferred to real life. We can normalize eco-conscious behavior, just like in Alba, Wildlife Adventure, um, where most of the gameplay revolve around um, like wildlife observation rather than um, rather than killing and shooting and looting. We can let player experience the joy of doing good deeds. This is something Animal Crossing is doing quite often. We should allow peaceful resolution to conflict. There are a lot of shooting games. I'm not saying we should ban violent games, but whenever there is a peaceful option to solve conflict, the message is much more powerful. We have that in Dishonored, Deus Ex, and even again in the Outer Worlds, where you get the best ending by talking to people rather than picking a side and attacking the other. And finally, we should aim at discouraging negative behavior, such as hoarding, for example, which is a very trope very common in games. It can be a bit counterintuitive because it's part of what we would call in game design quality of life for the player. But if we let player having this easy quality of life, we just basically teach them bad habits. So we should aim at teaching them better habits. Um, So, question for you guys, is there any game that helped you build virtuous habits or behavior that did transfer to your real life? Viridian? I never heard about this one. I will check it out as well. I'll definitely keep a copy of this of the chat log so I can I can check all those examples. It's super interesting. Pokemon Go. because you spent more time walking around. That's cool. And did you continue spending more time walking around after you stopped playing the game? Never stopped playing. Great. Life is Strange, Animal Crossing. Great. Thanks for those examples. Let's move to the next one. So, gameplay can team up with technology to build something else that's very critical, that very central to game design. And a game in general is a simulation. So there is something I understood recently is that you can't understand forcing from someone else. Understanding something, is a very it's a very intimate, a very personal uh, path to walk. And so games are best to do that, to just give a context and letting player understand things on their own. Uh, our brain values short-term outcome over long-term ones, so it's very so often we tend to discard long-term consequences, but games can make us experience those long-term consequences right after the action happened and make us understand the relationship. And also experimentation is one of the only way to truly understand complex systems. So what are the good way to use that? So you should ground your game on real earth science and data. We don't need every game to be fictional. Earth is a fantastic place, and there is so many things that there's so many material to build very interesting games here. The Plague Incorporated was a good example. It's a game where you're playing as a virus and trying to destroy the world. So it's not a very like positive outlook, but it is grounded on real science and really help to understand the mechanics of a pandemic. And so the game has been downloaded about 120 million times recently, and it keeps growing since the COVID pandemic. Now they also they since they have all this audience now, they've also implemented um, a new expansion to help figure out how to solve the COVID pandemic. Uh, we should give opportunities for trial and error in safe environment. That's what games are best for. But maybe sometimes we don't always need the stress. Some different people need a different amount of time to figure out um, to understand things. Demonstrate the interconnection between human and nature. So it's basically um, ecos learning about ecosystem. That's what Echo does it really well. In Echo, you are trying the all the players on the server are collaborating together to prevent an asteroid from destroying the planets by advancing their civilization. But the twist is that they need to do it without destroying the planet in the process. So they need to figure out what is the right balance to manage resources, and it teaches so much. It's the ultimate simulation. It will teach you not only about resource management and technology, but also about politics and social science and economics. And finally, build systemically when you can to encourage curiosity and experimentation. It's something more and more games are doing, and that's great. That's just great. Um, New question for you. Is there a game that made you understand complex system or pattern on your own by making you experiment and draw your own conclusion? If not, I will just keep going because we have a few one. Oh, wait. Incredible Machines, Crazy Machine, Nintendogs. Oh, Nintendogs was unexpected, but I see what you mean. Yeah, I can think of basically all the simulation games, SimCity, Kerbal Space Programs, the Anno, yeah. Civilization. There are also a game from the same people as Plague Incorporated called Rebels, which Rebel Corp, I think, which uh, which also teach the how to solve insurrections and things like that. Alchemy game on Android. Okay, I will keep moving because we don't have a lot of time remaining. So what can technology do? On its own, they are the keeper of optimization. Because before doing good, we should at least try to do no harm for the planet. And with ever increasing console and computer horsepower, it leads us often to neglect efficiency and release unnecessarily power consuming games. Modern games use too much electricity, which translates into high emissions. So different consoles have different emissions. So far, I think the Switch is the most eco-friendly. But in general, we should aim at using as little power as possible. So what can we do? Of course, optimize code to reduce power consumption as much as we can. A good example here, I would say, is Rocket League or even Minecraft, who are uh, who are so much optimized they manage to release on tons of different platforms and reach millions and millions of players. We should try to propose a opt-in power saving mode. This is something consoles do, but I think games could do it as well. And by calling it literally power saving mode or eco-friendly mode, it will give them a different message to players so they understand that they can, if they care about ecology, but they want to play game, they can actually, oh wait, Minecraft can be a really resource hungry beast. Yeah, but it's only if it's modded. um, Damn it, I should have not tweeted the chat. I lost my train of thoughts. So yeah, if we should propose opt-in power saving mode, so people who are interested in ecology but are still want to play games, they can at least find a compromise where they would do less harm but keep playing their hobby. We should always also aim at releasing on previous generation device when we can to fight obsolescence. So we don't push everyone to buy the next available console or the next or to replace their mobile phone or their computer if they can still play our games on their older device, and release on multiple platforms when we can to increase the reach of the positive impact every other discipline are making on a cultural influence. I gave the other example here on the Ori and the Will of the Wisps on Switch because they managed to like it's one example among a lot of other games we call a miracle port, games that were so power intensive on console and PC that we thought would never be able to run on Switch, and that prove that with enough dedication they could manage to get a game that look pretty much identical to the game on console or PC, but run on Switch, which use 5 to 10 times less power than other console from the same generation. I will skip question for now just to get to the end a bit faster. So when technology and aesthetics are working together, um, it leads to our last topic that are often been very hard to discuss within the game industry, is what I call graphic sobriety. If you guys can find a better name for that, I'm up for it. But so far, that's the only way I could express it. So the gaming culture assumes that good graphics make good games. Good games have the good graphics. And we've been conditioned to always max out our graphics. Whenever you get a game on PC, you're trying to figure out how far you can push those sliders before your computer stops working. But graphics are also responsible for most of the power consumption and the game size. Now, when you download a game, it can be 100 gigabytes, 150 gigabytes. All this data flow and all this power consumption are releasing greenhouse gas. And so we should aim at limiting this as much as we can. So now, I'm not saying we should make our game uglier because because no one wants to play ugly games. But I'm saying that we should at least tailor our art direction to our target experience. And Breath of the Wild and Team Fortress 2 are two great examples of games that look gorgeous. The aesthetic is brilliant. They serve the gameplay, they serve the emotion target of the game, they serve the story in brilliant ways, but they don't consume a lot of energy. Do you think when you were playing Breath of the Wild, were you thinking, I wish this game has a 4K photorealistic textures everywhere? No, you're just enjoying the game. You just let those emotions thinking sink in, and uh, and that's it. You don't always need everything to be photorealistic. One thing that would be brilliant is also to educate players about the power and carbon impact of each of their graphic setting, especially when they're playing on PC. We used to have low, medium, high, and ultra graphic settings with a little gauge that show you how much VRAM each of those settings use. I would love to have to call them like a eco-friendly balance and I don't know, high setting, and have a gauge that shows how much power your game will consume for each hour of gameplay and how it translates into greenhouse gas. So then player can take educated choice rather than just maxing out their settings. Yeah, which was the next point. Give player agency to balance their power consumption. We should also, as much as possible, rely on smart asset and texture usage to limit GPU usage, memory footprint, and CPU. So it's something we are trying to do in the game industry as much as possible, but we often have the assumption that if the game run, it's okay. It doesn't need to be optimized further because optimizing take time. But yeah, as much as we can, if we can manage our asset usage and texture usage in a smart way to try to really limit the GPU usage even further than what we need, it's uh, it's all extra for climate. And finally, yes, reduce game size to save bandwidth. So we finished our wheel. So the wheel is full. With this gave a lot of different tools for each discipline to tackle climate on their own or together. Now let's look at how it would look like if we were working together on all those things. So let's say we make a game that needs to solve a specific situation, and we'll all work together. So the message will say this situation is bad and must be improved. The emotional impact is this is how this situation should make you feel. The visualization is this is how bad the situation looks from a frontline perspective. So now you can imagine it. Or on the other disposition, this is how good the world will look like if we solve this situation. So now you can strive for this outcome. The call to action is this is what you can do now, player, to help with this situation. So let's just do it. Behavioral transference is playing this game already makes you build a virtuous habit that helps this situation. The simulation is please experiment with the component of the situation to draw your own conclusion and develop a deep understanding of this situation. Optimization is that the promise that the game is optimized to minimize its impact on the situation you're trying to solve. And finally, graphics sobriety. The graphics of this game are tailored to make you enjoy this experience with minimal impact on the situation we're trying to solve. So, in a nutshell, what we've learned today. Climate games can potentially be everywhere, and we need to reverse the assumption that a green game of what a green game is. Green game can be everything. Every game can have an impact, regardless of game genre, game type, setting, or target audience. And we must preserve the wonderful diversity of experience our industry is famous for. Every discipline is important. Artists, writers, designers, engineer, producers, QA, every talent has a role to play, and each facet of our game can be tackled individually or collectively. Everyone can contribute because making greener games don't need to be a company-wide policy. If, even on an individual level, don't wait to be asked, see what you can do now within your area of action. And finally, most important, every game must be fun because games are only useful if players want to play them. And nobody wants to play a boring game. So let's make fun games green and make green games fun. That's it for now. Now we will just keep these slides on, and we have 15 minutes to ask your question and brainstorm some ideas. Can you guys see? Can you guys read, or is the resolution not enough? Thanks, Deborah. Okay. If the text is too small or the compression doesn't help, uh, I'm putting a link in the comments which will give you a full resolution image. So is there any question first, or shall we start with a brainstorm directly? How would you answer your own questions? What? Which game inspired me? Um, every game I've listed so far. Mhm. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how to. Okay. So let's start brainstorming. So looking at this wheel, and so we have about a bit more than 40 potential actions here. So off the top of your mind, what action do you think could easily be implemented in your game, in the game you're working on? Oh, by the way, you don't need to use the chat anymore. You can just unmute yourself, and we can all have this party together.
Here, Arnold, maybe I can just jump in with a comment. Um, First off, thanks for the presentation. And I am, when I first saw your chart, it was overwhelming. It's just so much to take in. And you've managed to explain it. So I think that's extremely impressive. Um, Personally, I find that there's a lot here to take on board. And just thinking of the things that we can do at Creative Mobile, there's certainly some components in here. Um, but and I'll certainly be taking them back to the product teams to discuss.
Mm. Yeah, nice. So you can feel free to just take the image I shared and keep it somewhere.
I think what they need to see is the presentation. Actually,
Yeah.
I think the explanation is critical.
So we're recording the presentation anyway, so they can be we can share it afterwards for everyone who haven't been able to attend the workshop.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment too. Like I love this graphic. It's also reminds me of the SDGs, so it just has a nice tie-in. But some of the questions I had, or one question I had was, or one tied to your brainstorm is the thinking about the intersectional elements between disciplines. So, you know, the design could look at tech benefits like power saving modes and then try to implement systems that tie to it. Like the most simple version would be appointment mechanics, which result in short burst gameplay sessions and less power use.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And we could tie all of this together. So the if the design actually tells you at some point of the game, oh, by the way, you've now seen that saving power is important. So call to action. Why not going to the option setting of the game and lower those settings? What do you think? So we leverage optimization and maybe the graphics sobriety. And also we start behavioral transference, because if you've done that in one game and you realize that, okay, maybe the game looks a bit, maybe you removed a few things, but actually it didn't really impact your experience, maybe you will be inspired to do it in other game as well. So like reducing your impact. Because right now I think the problem as we're starting to talk about the the environmental impact of video games, there's just a lot of shaming going on. Like, can we care for the planet and play game at the same time? If you really care for the planet, you should not be playing game. Okay, but if you're not playing game, what else are you doing? Maybe you're doing like other things that are just as destructive for the environment, but you're not exposed to all the cultural influence who are trying to build. So I think we should really like give people options rather than telling them, don't do that, it's bad. Do that, it's good. But just like, why not trying this? See what you feel. And if you don't like it, if you enjoy keeping your graphics, it's all right. Uh, Maybe you can save something in other part of your life. You know.
Is there some way or some ranking system to know which ones have the most impact? Or is that phase 2?
So with that, that's a very big topic that we're having both with IGDA Climate League and at Ubisoft as well, is how we can measure the impact. And it's that's also a lot of what we're trying to do with this Green Game Jam. Like trying to figure out how we can measure the impact of what we are doing. And I think we don't have we are trying to build these models now. We probably won't have any clear findings before a little while because it feels like everyone I really think there's a strong collective inertia at the moment where everyone start to realize that yes, this is really important, and more studio, more and more dev team are joining the bandwagon and try to see what they can do. And a great example is this Green Game Jam where we have so many teams who wants to be part of the Green Game Jam compared to last year or to other Green Game Jam. So I think we will get our proofs. I don't know when.
So on that topic, I was thinking when you mentioned, oh, if you can have a call to action inside of the game to change your graphics settings, I was thinking it would be super good to know if people actually did it. So
Yeah.
like putting in an analytics tool. You know how these days people talk about analytics and I kind of cringe, but actually what if they can be a source of good where like you can publish whatever you found helped you out in your game, saying like, this is the impact that we've made.
Yeah.
People actually went through with it. That would be nice.
Yeah, definitely. And same thing to like using analytics are not necessarily bad. We can also use analytics to yeah, maybe it's just
Yeah.
what you just say, figure out how many people answered our call to action. So how many people end up donating to the charity organization we're showcasing in the game
Yeah.
after playing the game, how many gave before playing the game, how many people give after playing the game, and do the A/B comparison and to figure out
Yeah.
the impact.
Because that in itself already inspires people as well to then play more games and see that there is a lot of positive impact that can come from our industry. And I think that is the sort of stuff that keeps the ball rolling, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for your talk. It was really good.
Thanks.
Really enjoyed it.
I hope it helps. It's
Yes.
the idea was really to give you guys a food buffet of like all the different things you could try and taste and see if it works with your game or not. We don't need everything to be tackled at the same time. And again, I don't think green games should all look like each other. If we are trying to do everything at the same time for every game, maybe we would end up making just the same game again and again and again, and no one wants that. We need to preserve the diversity, because that's how we will touch all reach all audience. Is there some actions that are missing from this list? Some things that you may have already implemented successfully in a game, or that you are planning to implement, or that you already thought, oh, that would be really good if we could do this or that, and that you didn't see in this presentation?
I mean, you touch upon it here in the gameplay section, but in the call to action. But I guess could marketing and community get tied in a bit more? And I know Jesse brought up analytics. It seems like how much bigger can we make this circle so that the entire studio is involved?
Yeah. So you know what, I think on a so in very early in this conversation, I showed studio can have an impact, marketing can have an impact, and game content have an impact, and I will only focus on game content. So this is a wheel for like 40 action that game content can do. Long term, what I'd love to do is having the same wheel for what studios can do and what marketing can do. But I don't have the expertise in running a studio or an IT team, and I don't have the expertise on leading a marketing or communication project. So I can't really talk about that. But I hope on long term, I would love to have exactly the same thing for everyone, so we can have this really like multifaceted blitzkrieg action for climate in games.
Just a quick observation on the call to action side. So, one of your points here is to encourage support, contribution to climate works. And, it's absolutely fine. You could possibly be slightly more explicit and say, raise money, and or contribute to tree planting. When we went through it, it was slightly higher level. So maybe just kind of shake people to realize, oh yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, definitely. But so I kept the list of action quite short for each area of influence, just because I didn't want to overwhelm the slide with everything. But yes, fundraising could be a point on its own. I said encourage support and contribution to climate all, because fundraising is not the only thing you can do with climate alls. You can become an activist for this organization. You can start to share what they're doing on your social media. There's lot of things you can do. But in game, the least we can do is at least point to those organizations and say like, oh, have you guys enjoyed the content of this game? So are you aware that this is a problem where those guys are great at finding solution? Help them. And it can either be with fundraising or with other things.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Maybe we can keep this wheel growing and like adding more and more things. Like subdivide everything into like what are the different call to action that could be translated in organization on individual level.
I think this is an incredible start. And like you said, if we can
duplicate. I think like maybe something else.
Oh yeah, no, if we can duplicate this, like you said, for the other disciplines or the other areas, like that's such a strong model for other people to engage with. I think it's really, really great.
Cool. So I think that's a nice final word, and it's already time. So thank you, everyone. I also would like to thank all the wonderful people of the IGDA Climate SIG, from which many of those actions came from. Thank my colleagues of Ubisoft's Green Developer Groups, Playing for the Planet for organizing this Game Jam, and all of you for taking part in this adventure and using our games to save our little planet.
Love it. Thank you so much, Arnaud. Honestly, that was really, really great and practical. And I think everybody can immediately go away and really think about how they can apply some of these things, which is awesome. Later this afternoon, well, afternoon for me, different time zones for everybody else, we're going to hear from Trev and York about how you can help transform your players, which will also be a really, really great talk. So I do encourage you to come along. But yeah, for now, thanks so much, Arnaud. And this was recorded.
My pleasure.
So we will share the recording too.
Sweet. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Arnaud.
Thanks, everyone.